Welcome to another edition of Jules Voto's Photo Focus. In this video, I'm going to be talking about shooting Nikon's 50mm 1.4 Z-mount lens at a high school basketball game. Now, I reviewed this lens when it was first introduced, and that video appeared on October 9th of 2024. I received the lens on September 30th, did an unboxing video on October 1st, and then on the 9th did a review. And in that review, I shot the lens on my Nikon Z8 at Linvilla Orchards with 3 of my nieces. So I took a lot of pictures of them, mostly of them, and the lens performed very well. I did some tests of the bokeh, which I thought was very pleasing at 1.4 with, some images of the girls. And I will put a link in the description below to that video. But I wanted to see how well this lens performed for action photography. I sometimes shoot high school basketball for a high school in Philadelphia that I do photography for. I do their senior portraits, their staff pictures, underclassmen, and I sometimes shoot some of their sports. Now, back in that original review I did on this lens, I did do a little test on how well this lens would keep up with a moving subject. I had my niece run towards me. I was shooting, I believe, at 10 frames a second, obviously with continuous autofocus, and it seemed to do well. But I wanted to see in a real life situation, in a sports situation, basketball, how it would perform. And so I shot this game a couple days ago, and I think it performed very well. Now, high school gyms are not very bright. And on this particular day, I had the camera set for auto ISO, manual exposure control with matrix metering. I had my shutter speed set at 1,000th of a second. And from my previous experience, you need at least 1,000th of a second to safely stop the action. And I set my aperture at 1.4. And my ISO varied from 3,200 all the way up to 6,400. I think some of the shots even a little higher. And I dialed in plus 2/3 exposure compensation because the ladies' uniforms were white, the court was fairly light, the walls were fairly light, and I wanted to make sure I got good exposure on their faces. And in Lightroom, I shot in RAW, of course, and in Lightroom afterwards, I did a little exposure compensation, and I also used the highlights slider to get a little more detail in their uniforms. But the lens performed really well, and like I said, I shot mostly at 1.4 and 1.6. And we're going to look at some pictures in a few minutes. And last year, I shot one of their games using my 85 1.8 and the 40mm f2. And the 85mm 1.8 is a great lens. For basketball, it focuses very quickly. It's not the best for right under the basket, though, for action under the basket. Ladies going up for a rebound and so forth. So a 50 works out great for that. I think it's perfect for that. The 40 worked out pretty good as well last year, but I was really anxious to see what this 50 1.4 can do, and it did extremely well. It kept up with the action. I used, for my focus mode, obviously continuous autofocus. I used wide area small with subject detection, and it worked very well as long as I kept that focus box on the player's face. And you could drift off a little bit and it will still pick up their face, and it's uncanny how it will go right to the eye as long as the subject is close enough. And I shot primarily horizontal, and on some of the vertical pictures, most of the vertical pictures that you see, they were cropped vertical from the horizontal. And the Z8 enables you to do that because of the 45 megapixel sensor. And even at 6400 and a little higher, noise was very well controlled. I did no additional noise control in Lightroom. The only thing I noticed was occasionally when holding the lens, because the focus ring is so big, I would accidentally turn the focus ring. So it'd be nice if there was a way to lock the focus ring down. But not a big deal. You just got to be careful not to turn the ring as you're shooting using the autofocus, of course. Okay, so let's go look at some pictures, and I'll give a little bit more explanation as we do. Okay, so this little sequence here was at 1.4. My ISO was around 5,000, 1/1000th of a second. This is at 10 frames a second. So here's just a little sequence. My focus box was on number 0, the young lady with the ball. And it was amazing. It really kept up well. It kept the focus on her face. And surprisingly, there's enough depth of field to keep the other ladies in fairly good focus. And here's another sequence here. This was going for a rebound. And again, the focus was on the young, on number 24. And, that's the school I was shooting for Prep Charter. So obviously I was concentrating on photographing their players. And this young lady was driving to the basket. And again, it just picked up on her face. And the important thing is to keep that focus box on the player that you want to focus on, or close. It will pick up the face even if you're off a little bit. Now, I thought about using auto area AF, but in a shot like this, would the camera know that the person with the ball is the one that I wanted to focus on when there's all those other people in the background? And here we are now at 1.6. I switched over to 1.6, just a third of a stop down. I don't know, I just figured give myself a little bit more margin for error, even though those earlier shots at 1.4 were fine. So actually the rest of the shots here were at 1.6. And like I said earlier, my ISO varied. I think it was as high as 12,800 in a few of the shots. But noise is very well controlled with the Nikon Z8, and it worked out really well. Now, these vertical shots were cropped from horizontal. And that's one of the great things about a 45 megapixel camera, is that you can do that. You have a lot of room for cropping. And because of the low noise of the camera, along with that 45 megapixel, you could easily turn a horizontal shot into a vertical. Now, the 50 works out really good, like I said before, when you're under the basket. Someone going up for a rebound, driving to the basket. When they get close to the basket, the 50 works out great. But as they're coming up the court, if they're on towards the sideline, a longer lens would be better. You wouldn't have to crop as much. A shot like this, the 50 is great. But a shot like this would have been better with an 85, although I was able to crop quite a bit because of the 45 megapixel sensor. So I think overall this lens works out really well. It keeps the focus. It's sharp at 1.4. No, it's probably not as sharp as the 1.8, the 51.8, but I like having that little bit of extra speed in a dark gym. So I'm very pleased that I purchased this lens. Okay, so that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below. I always try to respond to all questions and comments. I haven't seen much on this lens on YouTube, or haven't read much about it. So I'm going to be doing another video on this lens. I already shot the pictures at FDR Park in Philadelphia and a few portraits, and I'll be getting to that next, so you should see that video in a couple days. So thanks for watching. I usually publish a new video every Monday morning and Wednesday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So I will talk to you then.